What's up, everybody? I'm Wesley Nelson, owner of Bad Batch Performance. Sitting here doing some work today, and I wanted to put out a new piece for you guys. This is a question that I used to get a lot, that I get a lot less these days, and I think it's just based on reputation in the town that I'm in. Is it seems safe, and everybody's taken care of at Bad Batch, and so I don't get this question as much these days. But it's one that I've had in the past, and is strength training okay for kids? And what does the data show? I can sit here and tell you like why I believe in it and like why I see these things, but what does some of the peer review journals say? Underneath this video, I'm going to cite my sources. I'll have, there's some from the Journal of Pediatrics, British Journal of Sports Medicine, and then the National Strength and Conditioning Association. I pulled some data from them as well. And so as a kid growing up, I can remember people saying like, lifting weights will stunt your growth. I can remember my granny telling me that drinking coffee would stunt my growth. So, when you're a kid, everything stunts your growth. And I can remember I got my start in sports performance realm. I worked for a major pre-C speed school location. And I remember my head trainer at the time answering the question one time with something that I had never actually thought about was he had a parent come in and he was doing an assessment and I was shadowing, and the parent said, well, will this not damage their growth plates? And he was like, he answered the question with a question. He said, do you have a trampoline in your backyard? And the guy was like, yeah, we have a trampoline. And he was like, what do you think that's doing to their growth plates? What do you think that's doing to, the body? Like they're, as they're, jumping and using these forces that are, coming from that pad. What do you think happens when they jump on the trampoline and jump off of it? Or if you're an idiot like me and you jump from your roof onto your trampoline as a kid, what effect do you think that has on the growth plates? And the guy had never thought about it either. He was like, wow, I never thought about that. I have a 4-year-old son that bounces around here all day. He's jumping off of anything and everything that he can. And so, when you think about it in those terms, it's like, okay, a supervised goblet squat in the gym is probably way safer than, a trampoline. Think about the injuries that can come from those. But again, the injury risks in the gym, they're real, but they're lower in comparison to common youth sports. And the reason that the injury rate is still real is really because it boils down to lack of supervision on equipment, lack of technique development from somebody who's unqualified to do it, equipment misuse and stuff like that. I have kids do that all the time. They'll jump on the bench and jump up on the pull-up bar and try to hang on to it. I'm pretty strict about making sure that stuff doesn't happen, but it does happen from time to time. They're kids, they have energy, and for whatever reason, they want to jump and grab whatever they can. The data shows that there are no evidence that, again, proper training produces growth plate injuries. The performance improvements, though, are beyond growth alone. So the meta-analysis show resistance training significantly improves maximum strength, power and rate of force development, sprint speed and agility, jump performance, and sport-specific performance outcomes. These exceed the gains attributable to normal growth and maturation alone. And that's really boils down to technique development. Like you're doing more for them in the technical realm of technical refinement and building motor patterns than you are for actually building muscle. Like hypertrophy in a child is not the same as hypertrophy in a 16 or 17-year-old young man or young woman. They have the hormones to back it. They're making the physiological changes. And I see that on a day-to-day basis. I'll have a 16, 17-year-old kid and I train them, 3, 4, 5 days a week, and I'll see them. I'm not paying too much attention. I'm, going through daily life. I see them all the time, but then, 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks later, I'm looking at them and I'm like, how much weight have you put on? And they're pumped when you tell them that. So, 5, 10 pounds, whatever. So again, these are you're gonna exceed these gains more than just genetics if you give them the tools to succeed, with weight training. You're also increasing bone health and long-term development. And I think long-term development is the thing that people often think less about. Especially at this day and age. I mean, I think it's suspected, the statistics out there, and don't quote me on this one, but I'm pretty sure that the general consensus is that by the year 2030, youth sports will be a $69 billion a year industry. And so, I mean, there's parents out there that are doing YouTube channels and stuff like that. They're thinking about, the short term development for, college and professional. Everybody has a professional athlete, and so, but what it really boils down to is setting them up for longevity in life, right? Like you're giving them not just the confidence to operate in the gym, right? You're giving them the technical coaching and cueing and skill development that they'll take later on into life. And it's one of the first things that I tell parents when I take them on at Bad Batch is, I understand that I'm not going to train you guys forever. I understand that I'm not going to have an athlete until, the day that they die or I die, like they're going to move on. And so I put a high premium on education. And I think that that's the way that it should be done. But the scientific consensus is the major organizations, so the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American College of Sports Medicine, the NSCA, and then the International Youth Resistance Training Consensus Panel, which has been put together just to prove that all this is true. They all agree that properly supervised resistance training is safe, effective, and is recommended for children and adolescents, which is really going to boil down to program quality and supervision, not age. So I have a young athlete that works out in my gym right now. He's 9 years old, and I'll have him in a rack right beside a high school senior. He comes in, he works super hard every time. I actually have to reel him back a lot, and make sure that he's not doing too much weight. He's not exceeding his, what he can handle. And so I keep a close watchful eye on him. But I think a good starting point for most kids is 7. I think by 7, you can get some listening out of them. You can start to really technically refine them. And the most important part about, taking on a kid that's 7 is they're not far removed from the proper movement patterns that you're already born with. Think back, if you're a parent, to watching your kid bend down and pick up a toy when they're, just learning how to walk. They squat down, chest is up, back is flat, knees are flared out over the toes. Their posture's perfect all the way down to the bottom. And then as we get older, we figure out that, hey, it's just easier just to bend at the waist, pick this thing up. We get lazy. So at 7 years old, like without, any kind of trauma from sport, they roll their ankle at soccer or whatever, they're not far removed from these proper movement patterns. And so, we're able to see that, and I'm able to, bring that back into the light. Like, hey, you came into this world, ready to do these things. When they start crawling and, developing their core strength and all that stuff, they're already in a position to move very effectively. Feet nice and wide, toes gripping the ground, that's where they are. And so at 7 years old, that's about the perfect time to, reiterate that, start to teach them how to use load, and do so effectively and safely. So that's about as early as I would take them. But, just to sum it all up, I think that it's one of the safest activities that they can perform. I think it's one of the most important things, from teaching them what hard work is about, accountability, showing up on time, right place, right attitude, ready to learn and hone in their crafts. And even if they never play a snap or a pitch or whatever for D1 athletics, they'll take this later on in life. They'll pass these lessons down to their family, and they'll continue to spread health and wellness through the generations of their life. And I think that that's super important. And so that's my talk today. That's all I've got. I'm going to include these peer-reviewed references in the video. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you like this video, like and subscribe. If there's other content that you want to see me put out, please let me know. I would love to do deep dives on anything anybody's willing to see. Until next time, peace.